All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Chat and Learn here with Power to Fly. We are super excited to have you all here. Everyone who's joined us live, we really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to join us. We know that everyone's, has busy schedules, so we really appreciate you taking the time to join us. My name is Mariella. I will be your Chat and Learn host. I will introduce our guest speaker here in just one moment, but I just wanted to go over a couple of housekeeping rules as we do have people calling from all over. I'm in Argentina. Our guest speaker is in San Francisco. We've got a couple more people calling from San Francisco. If you're just joining the chat, feel free to drop in the chat where you're calling from, and I will just call off where you all have written already. So we've got folks from Ohio, Michigan, Seattle, Guatemala, another person there from San Francisco. Awesome. So the power of digital community is key. I love it. I love that we can, come together on a digital space and really have, these really important conversations. I don't want to take up too much of our time giving you the housekeeping rules because our guest speaker has some knowledge to drop in this hour. So first thing I just want to say is please, feel free to be present and participate. So this is, you're taking the time out of your day. This hour is live. So we really want to cater to your live questions. We also, have received all of your submitted questions that you sent to Power to Fly offline. So we will go through them one by one throughout this hour. But, if any stories or anecdotes come to your mind and you want to drop it in the chat box, or you want to take yourself off of mute, please share your voice. You have the power. Again, my name is Mariella. And if you want to write me anonymously or Michelle anonymously, feel free to do so. And we will keep you anonymous, but otherwise drop it in the chat and we will share it when the time is right. Last thing I want to say is this is being recorded. So, please be present. I know that we are living in the era of multitask central. So, I know that you all are probably working, or I know some people are also driving. So, be safe, of course, but feel free to take yourself off of mute and drop in the chat whenever you feel that you want to. So without further ado, I just want to introduce our guest speaker. I'm not going to read what's on the screen here. I'm just going to pass the mic to Michelle. Michelle, thank you so much for being here today. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, how you came to know Power to Fly, and what you're excited to share with us today?
Yeah, certainly. Thank you, Mariella. So, hi everyone. My name is Michelle Del Rosario. I'm a principal software engineer here at Zynga, and to answer Mariella's questions about how we came into contact with Power to Fly, I work closely with our talent acquisition and engineering leadership here to open pathways for people to come join us in making, hit games that millions of people are going to love to play. And so, one of the things that is part of that is opening the pathways for folks like you who are on the line right now and want to know more and how to figure out how to get here. So. Again, we have a lot of partnerships, and Power to Fly is one of our key partners, and so I'm happy to be here and answer questions. I can go ahead and talk a little bit more about some of my background. So I've always been a gamer, and I knew I wanted to get into gaming. I thought I'd originally go into art, but later decided to do engineering. So I'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit in the questions. But I essentially kind of took a more traditional path here, but at the same time, I think there's a lot of learnings I learned from other folks along the way that I'm happy to share. So to echo Mariella, I really want to encourage everyone. Again, thank you for taking the time to be on here. We really appreciate that. And it's like I tell my mentees and my direct reports whenever we have one-on-ones, this is your time. So really, as much as I'm talking, I'm here to help you. So please chime in, ask any questions you have, because we really want to help you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Michelle. So let's dive right into some Zynga action here. Do you want to give us a brief introduction about, why you're passionate to work there? We'll go into some of the jobs that you all are hiring for right now. And just, go ahead and take it away, Michelle.
Yeah, so Zynga has this mission of connecting the world through games, as you can see on the slide, and we have a whole portfolio of different kind of game types. And so it's exciting to be a part of this company and a team that's working on some new and innovative ideas that really connect people socially so that they can, have fun and relax and play with their friends and just enjoy their time off of whatever stresses them out. And so I think it's really cool to be a part of that team and to really contribute to the foundation of these games that, again, millions of people are playing and they're enjoying. So to be able to help someone enjoy their day it's one of the greatest rewards I can have.
I love that. So tell us a little bit more about the women at Zynga. I had the beautiful opportunity to direct a video project at one of the events we had with you all. We got some great testimonials from some attendees there. We had great panels speak about, what it's like to work at Zynga. I was really moved by what, the attendees of the event had to say, but can you give us some more insight there?
Absolutely. So, for those of you who are unfamiliar, Women at Zynga is our Women's Leadership Employee Resource Group. And uh, again, for those who may not have heard this term, an employee resource group is, you can kind of think of it like a club. These are employee led, so they're essentially volunteer led. Employees come in and they share some collective background that they want to talk through something or solve a problem. And so Women at Zynga focuses on how do we empower our women to become leaders in gaming. And we do this through things like executive leadership coaching, a one-on-one mentorship program. We also have community events where you can see, I'm not sure if you can see in the picture there, but we're like building little bath salts and stuff like that. So they're fun little exercises for us to, get to know each other and network. And of course, my favorite is I'm part of our newly rebranded STEAM outreach. So we work with our local communities to bring in students, from as young as like elementary all the way through college to come see what it's like to work in gaming and really pave that way for them. Again, I really believe it's important to give back and to find a way to open pathways for people who may not consider themselves gamers or even think about gaming as an opportunity to at least have it something in their mind to consider later when they want to explore that. And so again, Women at Zynga is one of our longest running ERGs here and one of our most active. And our events are open for, the majority of events are open for everyone. So men, women, non-binary, you name it. Anyone is invited to the majority of our meetings. And we do also workshops for people who want to do more of their own career development. So it's really a phenomenal organization and I'm proud to be a part of it and really bring this to our employees.
Awesome. And I see you've got some Zynga swag there on your shirt. So I'm
Oh
happy
yeah,
to great. So I know that you all are hiring for several jobs here. If you all want to go follow them on Power to Fly, you can learn more about their work culture. You can see more, in detail about the jobs that they're hiring for. You can follow them on socials. And is there anything else you want to share with us, Michelle, about the opportunities that you all are offering now, so that our live callers are really excited to apply for some of these new jobs?
We are working on some really, really cool game titles. I would encourage you to check out the job requisitions. They'll tell you a little bit more about the kind of IPs we're working with, as well as the kind of responsibilities you'll do. And so I would also encourage you, if you think that maybe you probably hear this advice a lot, but if that you don't fit all the requirements in there, that's okay. Go ahead and reach out, because chances are it's like the requirements listed there are like the nice to haves. We really want that, ideally, but we realize there's potential in people, and so never forget that you have potential to grow, or if you are unsure, it doesn't hurt to try. So please reach out.
Awesome. And as we go through this next hour, I would love if you can share with our live callers, a little bit more about your personal journey, when you started Zynga, even before, what were your favorite games that you played, what inspired you to join this community. I'm super excited to pick your brain as well. I have the pleasure to moderate and really, facilitate some of these great questions that you all have submitted offline. So, we have lined them up one by one. We're just going to take them one by one this hour, and let's just dive right in so that we don't waste any time here. So we'll go with this first question. I'll just also mention, if this is your question that you submitted, feel free to take yourselves off of mute or write in the chat, if you want Michelle to dive deeper. And if this wasn't your question and you want, some more feedback, you have the power to share your voice. So please feel free to unmute yourselves. I've got everyone on mute right now just to avoid background noises, but we really want you to share your voice. So Michelle, walk us through this question here.
Yeah, so what are the necessary set of skills to become a successful game developer? I want to make a clear distinction here between what successful versus effective is, because successful to you may be different. It might be, it made a lot of money, loads of bucks, or very prestigious. You had a lot of impact, millions or billions of users playing. And so I don't really know how you may describe successful, but I'm going to go talk about what it takes to be effective. And let's go ahead and dive into that. So to be an effective game developer, obviously you have to have the technical skills, and these skills will differ depending on if you're in the mobile game development, so things like on your phone, tablets, versus AAA game development, which tends to be more console-based. Not always, but traditionally it has been. And so some of those we'll get into a little bit more detail, but I can say that they have similar tech stacks, but at the same time, they are a little bit different in that, for example, mobile, you'll be using something like a game engine called Unity 3D, whereas traditionally AAA game development may have their own proprietary game engine or lean on Unreal. So happy to dive more into the actual tech stuff in there, but I believe we have a little bit of a follow-up on that later on. So the next is the soft skills, and I think people actually underestimate this or don't think about this a lot because it's not what you think about with a traditional engineer. Traditionally, engineers, you think we're like, slaving away at the computer keyboard. And the reality is we're not in a vacuum, we're working with a team. So we need to have good communication skills. And this involves being able to speak to someone and articulate, what you're thinking or questions, like ask for clarity. Reading comprehension, oddly enough, is very important because the reality is you're building something. And the thing you're building is something someone else is articulating to you, usually through a written spec or a design document. And so you need to be able to read what someone has written and figure out like what it is they want, because sometimes it's not obvious or your interpretation may be different from the person who wrote it. So having that reading comprehension, having that communication is critical to be able to do the job effectively. And finally, empathy. And this is empathy for your users and your fellow developers. For the user side, obviously you want to understand like what does a user enjoy doing in your game? What can you do to make their time more enjoyable, make it more worth their while? And something that we at Zynga like to say is like, what are players going to thank us for? So having the empathy and to understand how the user feels and act on it is important. And I put empathy for your developers because I believe it's really effective for developers to understand how to build code or program their designs and architecture in a way that's being kind to the future developers and their current team. If I write code that is messy or hard to understand, sure, it works, but that's not being kind to my fellow developers who are going to have to take the mantle later when I move on to another project or they have to come fix a bug because I'm on some other critical thing. So again, having the empathy and realizing like, hey, how can I write this thing better so that someone who's not me can understand how to do this is a very critical thing to being an effective game developer.
I love that you are highlighting empathy. Thank you for that. First of all, I know that there's so much room for growth there in the tech industry for sure with empathy. I spoke in San Francisco last year about the importance of emotional intelligence in the workplace. And I find that, especially when we're involved in something that, it takes, where we have to coexist with technology more so than human beings, we kind of like push the human to the other side. And I say that with a little bit of laughter, but it can be very destructive as we've seen. So I love that you're highlighting this on the team, with your developers and of course with your users as well. So thank you for that, Michelle. Again, I'm going to sound like a broken record by the end of this chat, but please feel free to chime in. Our live callers, you are here for the hour. So, if you want to add on to anything or drop in the chat, feel free. Until then, we'll move on to the next question. Okay, so how did you get into development? Did you get a degree in computer science or attend a boot camp? Is one path better recognized than the other?
Cool. So I got into game development because, again, as I stated, I've always been a gamer. I started playing the Nintendo Entertainment System, or NES, at 2 years old, thanks to my mom. She had the infinite wisdom to figure, hey, this is some tech. I think my kids should have it. And so we did, and it was amazing. So I've been playing games ever since then. And then I actually thought I would go into art. I thought I would be doing really cool dragons. I want to do something like Skyrim or like Monster Hunter, really make these like awesome beasts because, again, back in the day, NES was like a bunch of little pixels, right? And so I thought I would go that route, but after talking with my father about it, he was like, hey, that's really, that could be a really challenging path. Maybe you want to consider something that opens up even more opportunities for you. Not to say that art doesn't, but he was thinking from his engineer, he's a civil engineer. So he was thinking from his engineering hat that engineering is pretty solid. So I thought, okay, yeah, sure, I'll explore that. What does that mean? And I later came to, my father was really big on do the research. So I looked up what I could in a local library and when we had those, I guess, when people went to those, but went to libraries. I looked up on beginning of the internet when it was first starting, what does this look like? And so I found out that's computer science. And so Mary, if you can go to the next slide. Thank you. I didn't have any programming experience until I went to college. I had a little bit of exposure through, maybe some of you are familiar with GeoCities back in the day from Yahoo. They had a "what you see is what you get" WYSIWYG tool, kind of like Dream. What was it? Oh, not Dream. I'm forgetting the name of it, but there was a program akin to Wix.com, things like that, where they allow you to build a website very easily without having to really know anything about programming. So that was kind of my programming experience, but not really. My real programming experience came from when I was in a robotics club in high school, and the upperclassmen of mine gave me a 3-inch thick 3-ring binder of C. And so this is like the C programming language, just a bunch of stuff in there. And, little ninth grade me was like, I don't know what this is, So again, very little programming experience, but that didn't deter me. I looked up where can I get a understanding of CS. And so I was proud to be accepted at Stanford University that I applied to, and I earned my degree there. As far as, do you need a degree? You don't need a CS degree. I know plenty of people who work with us who don't have a CS degree. They come from like a film background or pre-med. They come from bioengineering, like all sorts of different walks. And it's totally fine to have boot camp experience or equivalent experience. At the end of the day, we just care if you can do the job, right? And we care if you work well with others. So you don't need a degree. That said, a degree does help you get your foot in the door because it's pretty obvious to look at a paper and go, degree. But again, if you can, do well in an interview, if you could do well and do the job, it doesn't really matter because the bigger thing that's going to get you somewhere is an internal contact within the company you want to work for. Most people tend to get awareness of a job posting before it's even listed because they have an internal contact in the company who can tell them, hey, I had this position, send me your resume, let's push you in. And that's going to help you more than a line on your resume that says, boot camp or degree or whatever. Really having the networking is important. So again, that's why I'm encouraging all of you, like, please come on and talk because this is the kind of relationship building that you need if you want to get a little bit even further.
Absolutely. I love that you're highlighting networking. I find that, I'm always in awe when I see, people break their shells and just come out of, the box and start to have these really important conversations and I love that you also highlighted, when you have different backgrounds as far as, your career is concerned, or maybe even another degree is concerned, someone coming from film and then going into game and how that can change the perspective and change the movement there. We talk with a lot of people about who have either gone through career transitions or are thinking about it. So thank you for highlighting that and letting people know that, they can do something like that, a career transition. So please feel free to chime in if you're on the line and you have any specific questions about this. I love the big binder of C note that you have there. And again, the importance of I just hosted a book club chat about Michelle Obama's book, Becoming. And she was really highlighting the importance of, pushing people to network in the realm of education because, maybe teachers are really busy these days. And if you could just slide a binder over to a friend, that could change the trajectory of their lives. It's really, really impactful. So thank you for sharing your story, Michelle. Let's move on to the next question here. So do you have to be an avid video gamer to be successful working in the industry? How has your passion from gaming helped you throughout your career?
So no, you don't have to be an avid gamer. Again, like I said earlier, I have colleagues I work with that come from many backgrounds, and these include, like I said previously, like biomedics, there's architecture. Some of these people worked on satellites for NASA, you name it, just everything. You don't have to be a gamer or an avid video gamer to do this. And I think it's important to call out here, we talk about diversity, and I think we usually think about, women or race, things like that, ability. But having a diversity of backgrounds is really important because it opens a variety of viewpoints for people to consider when building a game and or building any product, really. And so I think at the end of the day, if Mariel, you go to the next slide, at the end of the day, the passion for games or the passion for the product is almost the same across industries because really what you're doing is you're making a product for others to enjoy. And the majority of our audience at Zynga anyway happens to be women. And again, these are people who don't necessarily consider themselves gamers. So that's okay. Again, you don't have to consider yourself a gamer. You may enjoy games and maybe you don't, and you don't realize it or however you perceive it. It's fine because really as long as you're passionate about making a product, that's what's going to matter. And for me personally though, playing games, because I do identify as a gamer, it helps me understand other players' joy when they play the game, as well as their pain points. I mentioned this about the empathy. Like when I play a game, especially one that I'm making, we call it dog fooding, but I'm happy to go into that later if you want to know more about that terminology. But essentially, we try out the game because we want to see how it is, and that gives us a better understanding for what are people actually going through. Because how else will you know unless you really play it or hear from someone? And so, again, playing the games has helped me because it also exposed me to different designs that we can emulate because we think they're really great and people enjoy them, or we can learn from. Maybe there's something that they're doing that we think we do better or different. So I just think that that kind of viewpoint is critical if you really want to make a well-rounded product that satisfies your users' needs.
Absolutely, and I love that you're highlighting, the importance of different viewpoints as you're developing and creating something. And I find that to be, it obviously
your leaders to let you take.
Sorry,
hello. Yeah, repeat that, please. Okay, well, if you want to write that in the chat, or if you want to repeat yourself, if you take yourself off of mute, we would love to have you share your voice. Someone actually has written in the chat privately to me, so I'll just go ahead and flag that, Michelle. How do you find mentors, and how do you approach them?
How do I find mentors, and how do I approach them? So, well, the easiest way is if someone flat out says, I really want to teach someone, and just ask me, like, I will teach you, which I say that because I've had that happen, and I went to that person and approached them. Like, I didn't approach them immediately after because I didn't think about it. I knew that they were someone really smart. I really wanted to learn from them, but I just didn't take the time to really go make that step. It wasn't until maybe a year later when we were on different projects, I was like, hey, you said you wanted to teach, and I really value your experience. Would you be open to helping me and mentoring me? I would really value your time, and I really want to learn about your experience in the industry doing XYZ. Like, this person, for example, came from AAA console development. And so that was something I wanted to learn more about. And I asked him, would you be open to that? And keep in mind, some people may want to do it or don't have the time. And for whatever reason, they may tell you no. And just be gracious, be like, well, thank you for considering. If you happen to know anybody else, please let me know, or please put me in contact. I would appreciate that. Or if later on you find the time or decide you would like to, please let me know, right? And then leave it, right? But the easiest, again, is if someone says they want help. Now, what if they don't say they want help, but you really want to go reach out to them? You can still reach out to them the same way, and just put the facts out there and the observations you have. Hi, so-and-so, I really value how you talk. I really value how you do these things. Can you teach me some of this stuff? Would you be open to, sitting with me for, and again, set the expectation. Like, just saying help me is a good start, but not the best. It's better to have, I'm sure you've all heard of SMART goals. So something that you can specify and it's measurable. There's action you could do to it. There's a timeline. So all that said, really thinking about, can you help me 30 minutes, every other Friday or whatever? Can we meet for a coffee chat or tea, whatever you want? And really just being gracious, asking for the time, and see where it goes from there. Most often people want to help, and so they'll be like, yeah, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, I'd be happy to, Again, set the expectation up front and tell them, this is what I want from you, this is why I think it's important, and it's gonna help me to learn from you to do this thing. So that way they have an idea of where you're going and they can help you get there. And that makes their job even easier, because if they're trying to figure out what you want, that's a little bit more difficult. So in a nutshell, just say why you want to work with them, ask them, be gracious. And if they accept, awesome, you have a mentor. If not, then ask for if they know anyone else you should reach out to, because again, expanding your network. And then, take it from there, like set a cadence of when you should meet, set the priorities, set the goals that you want to do. So it's really just about setting those little small progression milestones that you can reach.
Awesome. Yeah, someone has written here, great advice on how to seek for mentorship. Awesome. And I love that accountability factor, just to set it up nicely so that you can also hold yourself accountable, and that the mentor, potential mentor, can, define the roadmap for the relationship. So do you find that people in your industry are more open to mentoring or not? I don't know if you can speak on that, or what's your experience there?
So in my experience, like people are pretty open to it. It's especially if in what we have here at Zynga is called a job family architecture or the JFA. Essentially, this is just a sheet that specifies your role and your title, the kind of responsibilities you should have as a principal software engineer versus an architect or a distinguished engineer. And so some of these like more formalized processes have mentorship built in, right? For other places that don't, that's totally fine. Like most people, again, they love to help. So just ask them and be gracious, and follow up. I think it's important to, if you get help and then be like, thanks. And then you just drop them, they'll be like, oh no, what happened? Like, did they do okay? Like follow up and be like, hey, they really, like, however long after, like hopefully feedback should be timely, right? So hopefully within like, a couple weeks or whatever, tell them like, hey, I used that strategy you share with me and it really helped me do this thing in my job better, or I spoke more confidently, I used your advice, it was helpful, thank you. That's so helpful to help your mentor also feel like they did do the thing that they were helping you strive to do.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that, Michelle. Let's move on to the next question here. And I'm just going to sound like a broken record again. Please feel free to, write in the chat anything that's on your mind. Come off of mute if you'd like. We really want to hear your voice. So how does one transition from a full stack developer to a video game developer?
Yeah, so the good news is if you're a full stack developer, you're already in high demand. Most people that I've worked with anyway tend to specialize in either client or server development. And what I mean by client and server is client would be something more like game features on, like through a game engine, whereas server would be someone working like in AWS or doing some kind of saving progress and data into the cloud. And in the gaming industry, there's additional functional specializations within the team. So for example, I mentioned the client versus server, but maybe on the client, there's someone who really focuses on performance optimizations, or someone who focuses on purely game feature implementations. Someone else may focus on doing tooling. So it really depends on what are you looking into. And Mariel, if you go to the next slide, please. I tease this, but what do you want to work on? Do you want to do game features? Do you want to work on system architectures? There's also, you could do technical art. This is like helping your fellow artists and writing a pipeline to help them translate their beautiful art in Maya or Photoshop and get it into the game, right? Maybe you don't work directly on the game team, but you work in what we call a central technologies team. And so you're making, for example, everyone's seen a friends list, correct? You're making like a friends list, and every game team does not want to have to make their own friends list. Maybe you make some centralized product or service that is the friends list service that you can share with all the different game teams. And again, tooling. So maybe you're making a player support portal so that your player support representatives can reach out and talk to your players and help them solve issues that they may come across. So again, I pose a question, what do you want to work on? Because if you're full stack already, like you're pretty high in demand, and figuring out what that thing you want to work on specifically will help you, one, apply for the job and figure out what you want to do on the team, and two, learn on the job. Because the reality is every game team you go to, they're going to have different tech stacks. The principles are more or less the same across, but they'll have a different tech stack. Like maybe they'll do a different form of source control. Like instead of Perforce, they'll use Git. We don't work in a vacuum, as I said before. You can totally work with a colleague and learn, and that's what you should do because that's the best way to do it.
I love that. We don't work in a vacuum. Hallelujah. That's nice. All right, so let's move on to the next question here. Where do you start when you're coding a game? Is there a specific part of the process you enjoy more than another? And what is your uploading process?
All right, so when we start building a game, we typically go through what we call a product lifecycle, or PLC. This starts with what we call the concept phase, and this is where we have a small team of developers, maybe like 2 engineers, a product manager, and maybe a producer or a game designer. Very small team. We're making rapid prototypes. We're trying out different ideas. We're just seeing like does this work? Does this not? And you can imagine a lot of work gets thrown away, but at the same time, a lot of work like comes up and says like it bubbles up and it goes, this is fun, So you don't get attached to anything too deeply, but you get to build things really fast. And that's if that's your cup of tea, which it is for me, then great. You're building so much. After we get an idea of like, okay, we have a concept, this design seems fun, let's go ahead and go into what we call pre-pro or pre-production. And this is when we harden our code base. We figure out, this is the way we want our infrastructure to be. Here's the core systems. And then we bring in more people. So more staff come in to help build the game. And we finalize the plan of how we're actually going to build this game. Then we go into production, and that's when we actually build the game. So the plan that we got from the pre-pro, the design has been already hammered out. We're ready to build a game. We just full steam ahead. We're building. Lots of people come on, and we go. Once that nears the end of its cycle, we go into what we call soft launch. And this is where we select a few key areas that we want to just test the game in a smaller market. And we put the game out there. We say we uploaded it into the iOS and Android stores, and we're like, okay, let's see how our game does in these areas. And did our tech scale? Are there any issues? Let's redact them, what are we doing? So we solve those issues. And once we feel good about doing soft launch for a period of however long we decide, several months usually, we go into what's called a worldwide launch. And this is when everyone in the world gets to play. We unlock it for everyone, and you don't have to be in a special store to access it. So everyone's playing, and shortly after that, we go into what we call live ops or live operations. And this is when we're doing regular event cadence. So we'll put in new features every so weeks, and just keep the game fresh and fun for players for the duration of the game. For me, my favorite part is concept and pre-pro, because I get to contribute to the game's foundation, and I really get to advocate for what we call player love features. And this is things that, again, going back to what are our players going to thank us for? And as a gamer myself, I want to make something that I think other people are going to find fun. So I get to be on the forefront advocating for that. And you still advocate for that even when you're in live ops, but it's a different kind of feel. When you're on the foundation, it just, for me, it's really rewarding to be like, I set that up, and that's my work. It's going to speak for everyone,
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your process. This is really in-depth, and thank you for asking this question. And I don't know if the person is on the line now, but thank you for this thorough response, Michelle. Again, feel free to chime in. All of our live callers, we've got several people on the line, and I know that we are in an age of multitasking, but please feel free to be present at any point so you can share your voice with us. Let's move on to the next question here. So how can I become a successful independent video game developer?
Cool. Again, I'm going to caveat here with what success means to you might differ from what success means to me. So I'm going to focus on best practices. And these are best practices that apply actually for any kind of developer, but especially so for indie game developers, because your studio size is very, very small, traditionally just you, right? Maybe your friend. So best practices include managing your project scope. You may want to make, the most amazing AAA graphics, multiplayer, synchronous, real-time combat system, right? A game. But the reality is those kind of projects typically take, up to 4 to 5 years, and with a team of 100 people plus, right? So now imagine that, and you trying to do all that work, and you could do it depending on how much time you have, right? Your constraints differ. So if you have all the money in the world and the time in the world, go for it, right? But generally, you want to manage your project scope. You want to really go down to what are your core features? What is the thing that defines your game? Anything else on top of that is superfluous, and you can add it on as you go when you grow the game. So it doesn't mean don't do it. It just means maybe not right now. Do the core project first. And once you get that core project done, you want to actually test it with your audience. So identify who your target audience is and ask people to play it. Say, hey, how do you like this? How's it going? And watch them play. Sometimes they might not be able to tell you things, but if you watch them how they're playing it, you can see things that they struggle with or may not enjoy as much, right? So that leads into receiving feedback. Ask people, what do you think? How can I improve it? And then, really take an honest look and ask yourself, is this feedback something you should implement? I think most people get kind of defensive sometimes, and they're like, this is my baby. It's perfect. And maybe it's perfect for you. But if you really want to hit your target audience, then you might need to take some feedback and iterate. The caveat there is you can't please everyone, so make sure it is your target audience, the majority of them, because otherwise you'll just get stuck making this hodgepodge thing that you try to appease everyone, and it just ends up weaker because it's not good at any one thing, right? Another thing I would recommend is it's really tempting as an indie developer or any solo developer to try to build everything yourself. You want to have all that credit. You want to say, I'm smart, I did it, I have all the stuff, That's cool, and that's fine if you want to do, a proof to yourself kind of thing. But the reality is you have time constraints, maybe money constraints. Just use something off the shelf, something like you could purchase from the Udemy Asset Store or any other kind of online market that helps you. And this is going to be important because when you're building, let's say you know how to use Maya, but only a little bit, or and you can learn, but again, it's going to take time. So rather than you spending so much time learning how to do this thing, get someone else who already knows how to do it. Pay them $5, $30, whatever it is. Sometimes it's free, actually, if you're looking. And of course, with some restrictions on licensing, so pay attention to that too. And then use it because that'll help you iterate faster. The caveat again here is you may need additional work on those assets because maybe I get a really beautiful horse model and it's got 300,000 polygons on it, which is not going to fly in my mobile game that can only support up to 30 polygons per model and only 10 models. So, you may need to do some more work on it. Finally, consider your marketing strategy. You might have a really awesome game, but if you don't know how to promote it very well, no one's going to know about it, right? So they're only going to know if you hand it to them. So make sure you think about how am I going to promote this? Did I, make an interesting video? What makes me different or not different? What makes me better? Consider how you're going to sell it to someone who doesn't know what your game is and it's going to make sense. And I think a really key thing to think about here is ask someone who's not really familiar with their game, how will they describe your game? And that will give you a better understanding about how you can really market that to someone else so that they get it, right?
I love that you're empowering people to, not grip the baby tight and to give the baby to the world so that you can have this integrated feedback cycle. And then also that will probably help with the way you promote it as well as an independent video game developer. So yes, empower everyone to do it. I love it. And also to be kind to yourself, right? To not take everything on and then just burn yourself out because, I, as an independent video gamer today in 2020, I can imagine that brings a lot of weight. So protect yourself and make sure that you're not taking on too much. Thank you for highlighting that as well, Michelle.
Absolutely.
All right. Anything else you wanted to add here is so much good information.
That was the best practice I have, unless someone else had a follow-up question to it. Happy to move on to the next ones.
Yeah, why don't we both have a sip? I'll have a sip of my tea, you have a sip of your water. We'll give a little pause, and we have our people on the line here pretty quiet, but we'll give you a second to think about it. No one wants to come off mute? All right, perfect. No worries. You have time. We've got about 20 minutes left. So, if it's now or never, 20 minutes.
Hey, I have a question.
Awesome. Go for it.
Yeah. So, as a new developer or a comparatively new developer on the team, how do you make yourself heard about your, opinions, about your, tips or something? How do you market yourself within the team so that you can grow within your career?
Cool. Before I answer that, I guess, can you give me a scenario if you're comfortable with sharing, what you mean, make yourself known? Because I have a couple different approaches, and I want to make sure I'm answering the question for you.
Sure. So I had an idea about an open source library, and I wanted to, bring up this culture of contributing back to the open source library. And as a new developer, for that instance, my idea didn't go through, but I just wanted to get more, tips on how to market ourselves better, how to develop the trust in us within the team so that they can give us an opportunity.
Great. And one more question. Can you elaborate? How did you approach your team with this? Because I don't want to tell you to do this thing if you already did it, right? So can you share a little more about how did you approach the team with the open source request?
Sure. So I had a prototype design, and I deployed it, and it was out in the market. And I just wanted to, I approached my manager first and told him about my idea, then presented it to our, bigger upper management. But then, firstly, there are many legal issues when we want to, put something out open source. Secondly, I also feel that because I was relatively new to the team, I couldn't establish myself, or my idea wasn't put forth with much confidence. So I just wanted to know, like, how do you build that trust, and how do you make sure that you're heard when you have good ideas?
Yeah, absolutely. Great. Thanks for sharing more context. So in this regard, you went to your manager and you went to some others to get this request done. And I would say, I know you have some concerns about being relatively new to the team. I think it really helps when you frame it in a way that, yes, open source, like great to do, but frame it in a way that this is helping the company or benefiting the team somehow, right? Like what is the key takeaways that they get from it too? So it's a mutually beneficial kind of effort. And I think what can help you with that is asking, like, really asking yourself, like, well, why do we want to contribute to open source? And obviously, besides that, it's like good intentions, right? And how does that help the company? Because when you can frame it in terms of like what the company can, quote unquote, get out of it, they're more likely to be like, oh yeah, that sounds great. We totally want to have more exposure. We totally want to have like, we want to be a leader in this sphere, right? Depending on what it is that your goal is, and helping to articulate why that goal is beneficial for you, the open source community, and your company. As you mentioned, there are some legalities that may need to be looked into, and then sometimes like in that particular case, you might not be able to just because of legal reasons, right? But to answer your question about like, well, what about just getting visible outside of that specific scenario? What about, I have other great ideas, I want to be heard. I would always recommend building like a board of advisors, like your advocates. You are your first and biggest advocate. And so as you build relationships around your team, finding out like, who do you share ideas with, and who do you think is receptive and willing to help champion you and your ideas and put you in those spaces where you can be visible, be heard, is a big start. And I know that sounds like a really daunting task to be like, I'm new, I don't know anybody. When you do find people, like you can also ask your peers, be like, hey, who do you think would be good at doing this thing? Like being able to help me push my ideas, or who do you think would, like to hear more about this, and I can talk to them more about it, because you don't know what you don't know, but other people can tell you. And again, I'm going to always bring up expanding your network. They can connect you with people that maybe they don't know, but they know someone else who may know. And that connection is what's going to help you get ahead, right? It's going to help you, one, expand your influence, expand your visibility, because now you're talking to many different people. And really, you're getting more exposure into that, taking initiative and being a leader in that regard. So I hope that helps answer your question. I'm happy to follow up if you have a follow-up question.
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, thank you so much for jumping off of mute. We've got about 15 minutes left, so if any more brave souls want to chime in, now's the time. And then I would just say, as Michelle is highlighting, networking is key. So we've got a lot of people here on the call. Please use the chat box to share information. If you all want to connect, if anything that our live caller just said, sparked an idea for you, or if you want to connect with her, please feel free to connect with her privately, or, write in the chat, and please, build your network, as Michelle is saying. So good. Let's move on to the next slide here. And keep in mind, we've got 15 minutes. So, if you've got anything that you want to share before the 15 minutes is up, please drop in the chat or take yourselves off of mute. And if we don't get to your question before these 15 minutes, no worries. Michelle is going to put her awesome bullet points in her live chat page so that you can refer to those at a later date. So what does a traditional career path of a game developer look like?
Yeah, so there's many different paths that a game developer can take. For software engineers, we tend to have what we call an IC, or individual contributor. And this is, you're starting off and you're the doer, right? You're the person who gets into the weeds, does all the programming, does the thing that needs to be done so that you can make this product and move forward, right? And then that can evolve into a lead position. And a lead is still an individual contributor, but now they have an expanded set of responsibilities. They're the ones who are now leading a group of individual contributors, and on a small pod, for example, and they'll work toward getting a specific feature done for the game. And it's the lead's responsibility to help get everyone who they're leading to do the thing, and then also be responsible for making sure that whatever the feature is they're developing, it works, right? They're the person who is accountable for that. obviously all the other ICs are accountable to you, but the lead is the one who's at the end of the day going to be like, okay, I verified my stamp of approval. We're good. Management is kind of the next step there. Again, these are all different pathways. I want to highlight that they are, and emphasize they are 3 different kind of pathways you can take. Because if you really want to just be, a doer, stay in IC. If you want to lead a little bit, but don't want to really manage people, be a lead. Management, again, a third path you could have is where you're actually managing a team. So now you have 5+ people potentially where they report to you and you're the one in charge of their performance evaluations, what they, their goals are, working with them on their goals, and also helping to coach them. Leads are, I would say, more akin to potentially mentor, but not really. They're not really focused on your growth necessarily. They're focused on getting the product done. They can help you with their growth, don't get me wrong, but that's not their inherent focus. Management, on the other hand, is. Management is really inherently focused on how do we make sure that we get you to have a career path and grow toward it, and be recognized for your achievements and accomplishments. I think I have another here, which is, that was software engineering. There's other career paths for game devs. I just want to highlight game devs is a kind of broad umbrella term. It can refer to anybody in art, production, sound effects, narratives, product management, QA, and many others like legal and ad monetization. There's so many others that I could just go on forever. So there are many paths, and I just talked about software engineering, but they're fairly similar to the other ones too. They have all their own differences, of course. So that's, again, in a nutshell, you could have 3 different kind of pathways. I think most people tend to think of it as IC, lead, and management, and that is one pathway to get to management if you want. Or again, you could just say IC or IC to lead. That's it, right? So those are the kind of different pathways you could have as a software engineer.
Awesome, thank you for that. And I'm curious if you all want to write in the chat where you are currently in your career path as a developer, or where you're looking to go. We've got about 10 more minutes, so maybe Michelle can dive in deeper there as it relates to your personal career journey. So until then, we'll move on to the next slide here. So what are your top 3 tips for women looking to become leaders in male-dominated industries like gaming?
Yeah, so this is a great question. Thanks for asking this. All the ones are great. I would say one of the number 1 things is help solve people's problems. This not only shows you have technical competence because you're solving the problem that was difficult for them. So it's like, well, you're smart, you figured it out. But it also shows a willingness to go to the extra mile. You are taking that leadership role to help someone else and, propel the team, the company forward beyond just your day job. So that's, really critical for people to start identifying leadership. The next, if Mariella can push forward, please. Yes, thank you. Is making your value visible. So it's great to help people, but you also need to tell people you're helping people, right? Because there's research that shows that women in particular will tend to just think that their hard work speaks for themselves. And I'm guilty of this. I did this early in my career. I just worked really hard and thought, yeah, people will just see the work, right? But they're also working really hard. So no, they may not see the work. So really need to be able to talk about it. And this is different from bragging because you're literally just saying facts. You're just saying, I did this feature and it helps boost our revenue X%, or it helps retain our users even more, or made the artist's life so much easier. They have a quality of life. They don't have to do an hour of integration. They could just push a button. It's done in 2 minutes. Things like that, where you can show demonstrably what it is you did and the impact. And again, you tie this into clearly articulating your aspiration for a leadership role. Because if you just keep doing these kind of, helping people solve their problems, you might just get stuck in IC as like, yeah, you're the go-to, you're the problem solver. Which, if you want to stay in IC, great. But if you want leadership, you need to actually speak up and talk about why you want to be a leader and how you've been demonstrating leadership skills. And the follow-up to that is the follow-up. So once you articulate this kind of stuff, follow up with the people you've been talking to. Make sure that they can help you and give them updates where you are. It should be a collaborative process. And so this is what's really going to help you, hone your skills and have a continual momentum. You don't want your momentum to fizzle just with I said it once and it's done. And the third tip I have for you, and Marielle, if you could, thank you, is be gracious. I believe that people, neglect this part. And the reality is you learn so much from your peers, from your mentors and your sponsors, and you should be gracious for their time. And, just tell them, they appreciate that. And I think the biggest mark of a leader is paying it forward to other future leaders, because ideally you'd be able to delegate some of your workload to them and they can grow in the same way you've been growing thanks to your peers, mentors, and sponsors. So help solve people's problems, make your value visible, and be gracious.
Awesome. Thank you, Michelle. We have someone who's written me privately here. You are now welcome to share your voice, come off of mute and ask your question.
Yeah, sure thing. So I think it will be a great follow-up question for this. First of all, thank you so much, Michelle, for sharing about your career path. It's super insightful and inspirational. My question was, like, as a female leader, what has been like the most significant hurdle that you have come across in your career path to move to the next step, and like any insights there on how you had overcome that, and that would be like helpful for us.
Yeah, great question. Thank you for asking. So the most significant hurdle I've come across in my leadership path kind of relates to the visibility, actually, and that is I brought up my aspiration, but I kind of didn't follow up on it, where I was like, yeah, I told my boss, I told my people what I want, like what I'm trying to do and help with. And they're supportive, and that's amazing. But then again, they're also really busy people. So it really is, the onus is on me to follow up and be like, hey, can I get some more time? Can I, we call them little end negotiations. Can I have some time to work on this project? Can I do this thing so that I can get more experience in the gaps we identified and move forward? And I think it's really critical to make sure that when you talk with your supervisors or anybody who's helping you grow, that not only do you identify any technical gaps they may see, and take it in stride, like really be honest and assess yourself, like there are ways you can grow and it's great. But really think about like, okay, well, now that we know what the gaps are, what's the timeline? Getting the timeline is the biggest hurdle, because it might be like, yeah, we'll get to it eventually, right? But eventually to you might be a month. Eventually to them might be 6 months. So aligning on what the timeline is was a big thing for me, and just again coming in and making sure that we stick to it. Or if we do have to diverge, then let's collaborate again on adjusting the goals, right? Because the goals don't have to be super firm, but as long as you have a timeline, you follow up, and you have momentum, that's what's going to go and keep you pushing forward.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for hopping off of mute there. We've got about 5 more minutes left, so I'll take one more slide here, and then if anyone wants to use these last 5 minutes to hop off of mute or drop in the chat, and then we'll close out with Michelle talking more about Zynga. So just to warn everyone there, we've got 5 more minutes. Now's the time to share your voice. This last question here, what's something you wish someone had shared with you before becoming a leader?
So I think I might have harped on this. If we go to the next slide, Mariella, thank you. And that's sharing the aspirations and getting the commitment. It's one thing for people to support you, which is amazing. Always be grateful for that. But it's also another thing to, kindly request them to commit to helping you, right? Like, what's a mutually beneficial pathway to get to where you want to go that also helps them, right? And I think something to keep in mind is be open to creating a creative solution to address gaps. So let's say you need to do some work on, I don't know, maybe you want to become someone who's really well known in graphics. And so you might need to brush up on your shader skills. And so if you can't get the time to go work on the shader skills, maybe ask, well, can I work with someone else who does shaders? Like, so I can learn through them, have a more formal mentorship, or can I get every, Tuesday to work on this thing, that's going to be important. And again, follow up, because saying it once is a good start, but you need to keep going. I like to think of it as your growth is like a plant. You need to keep watering it or it's going to wither. So you water the first time, it's doing great. And then you stop watering it, it died. So you need to keep watering your plant. You need to keep watering your growth and keeping that in mind.
I love that analogy, and it's real. I mean, whenever I have to like house sit plans, like if you believe it or not, I mean, and it should be right. If you're going out of town and you've got plans, someone's got to take care of it. And I really respect those people that say, hey, can you come by for like 5 minutes to water my plant because, you know, da, 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 da. And I love that you're putting this analogy into the way that we need to develop ourselves as well. So thank you for that. We've just got a couple more minutes, so I'm just going to open the floor up for our live callers. Does anyone have a last minute question, or if we didn't get to your question, you want to kind of chime in now before Michelle wraps up this chat? Now is your time. All right. Okay, well, in the meantime, feel free to continue to, you know, hop off of mute if you want, but I really want to dive into the fact that Zynga is hiring. So Michelle, can you let us know what positions you're looking for? I know I directed everyone at the beginning of this chat to go to your Power to Fly page and learn more there, but if you want to tell us a little bit more about the position you're looking for, what's your favorite part about working at Zynga? I know you've spoken so much already about all the beautiful things you all do there. And do you have any tips for someone who's interested in applying?
Yeah, so we are hiring. I would encourage you to check out zynga.com/careers or through the Power to Fly portal that Mariella shared. Positions open include software engineering, which I can speak more to that, as well as I believe we have production and recruitment, all kinds of positions. I just encourage you to go check because it's always being updated constantly. So definitely check it out. My favorite part about working at Zynga, oh, it's hard. There's so many. I mean, like, you know, I bring my dog in. I can, you know, we're spoiled with catering, and in some offices or in SF, we have an on-site culinary team, which is fantastic. But more, I think career growth-wise, I think I'd probably have to say, I had to say that I really love that our leadership is really, you know, on board with these kind of initiatives. Like, they actually are present when we do Women at Zynga ERG kind of events, and any of our other ERGs. Like, we have Z Pride, we have for LGBTQ, we have BZU, our Black Zynga Union, like so many others, even Z Paws for people who have dogs and are like puppy parents. You know,
Yeah, someone dropped in the chat how to follow Dogs of Zynga on Instagram.
Yes, absolutely. Please check that out. We have our cuties in there. Yeah, so I think really just having the support from our leadership from the top down is one of the best things, that knowing that, you know, you're in a company that really means it when they say they want to make Zynga the #1 destination in gaming for women. The next question here, do I have any tips for someone who's interested in applying? Do it. Like, don't hesitate. If you see something and you're like, oh, I don't have all the things, I said this earlier, you don't have to have all the things. Just apply, because you may be a great fit as you are. And again, we see potential, and we will definitely grow someone with potential. So don't hold back because you're like, oh, I have 8 of the 10 things. I mean, come on, just apply. Even if you have 6 of the 10 things, go ahead and apply, you know? You don't know what's gonna happen. So definitely just do it.
Awesome. Thank you, Michelle. So thank you, everyone, for joining us in this hour. We are at our time. Time flew by. You dropped so much knowledge. I learned a lot from you as well. So thank you, Michelle, for taking the time out of your schedule. Everyone, be sure to follow Zynga on Power to Fly. You can follow them also on socials and see their awesome, you know, dog life at Zynga and all the other wonderful things that they're doing with the initiatives that they're building there. And I just want to say, you know, thank you for joining us. Make sure that if you want to rewatch this video, you check back in on Power to Fly, and you can, you know, take some notes there, and you can really look at this beautiful presentation that Michelle has put together. But without further ado, I just want to say, you know, have a great rest of your week, have a great weekend, and don't be afraid to apply. Like Michelle said, go for it, you can do it, and we empower you to do it. So have a great weekend, everyone.
Thank you all, really appreciate your time. Thanks, Mariella, for having me.
All right.